This is the Grow to Amazing podcast. This is Word of the Week number 5. And today's Word of the Week is depression. And I debated on this word for a long time and didn't really want to necessarily debate or talk about this particular word. Depression's been a fixture in my life for quite a bit of it. And unfortunately, I've insidiously let it creep into different parts of my life and take it over at certain points, and it still can get me definitely at times. And so we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit, and I'm going to open up probably some wounds that I don't necessarily want to talk about here on the podcast, but I think it's also something that I need to talk about as part of my healing journey from that and as part of moving forward. So we're going to do her and we're going to give it my best shot and see where we can take things from there. So, depression is, if you look at the technical definition, it's a group of conditions associated with the elevation or lowering of a person's mood. And in my case, it was definitely a lowering. And I don't think it ever got to the point where I was well, let's start back at the beginning. That's the clinical definition. My definition is just feeling more like I'm unable to act and that I'm going to take the easy path or push the easy button in everything that I do and not take the bull by the horns and be more of just a responder to events as they occur. And I don't know where that came from. And so I don't want the last thing I want is for anyone to blame anything that happened or any of my actions or inaction or anything like that on my parents and the way that I was raised. That is so far from the case, so far away from being true. Um, Stuff just happens. I don't know if it runs in our family or if it's just something that I had issues with or what, but it was definitely something I suffered from, um, and still do occasionally. I think I'm much better than I was now. I think and we'll talk about some of the strategies at the end for dealing with it. But to kind of set the stage, I think my depression largely started when I was in high school. I didn't have a great high school experience in terms of friends and things like that. I had a lot of acquaintances. I had some people I hung out with, but I didn't have any good friends. And or friends that I felt like I could go to 24/7 if I needed to, or could just uh, that I could call a best friend in high school. Um, I've come to terms with that over the years. It was definitely something I had a hard time with right after high school and during high school. And there's many of my classmates that I absolutely love now, and they've done stuff for me without thinking about it twice, or for my family. And so I did have a great class of people that I went to high school with. I just think I was caught up in not feeling like I belonged anywhere, and I was also caught up in a little bit of the hubris of my achievement at grades and things like that as well. I think I was kind of cocky about that and set myself apart from them to a certain extent. And so I think I contributed to my own issues there. And I didn't have the wherewithal or the ability to step outside myself and see what I was doing at the time. So I think I exacerbated my own problem. I think I could have had good friends had I chose to friend the people that wanted to be friends with me and not always tried to reach for something that, like being in the quote unquote popular group, that wasn't going to happen anyway and didn't need to happen anyway. So um and that I think college was a big change for me because I did feel accepted in college. I felt like I truly belonged probably for the first time because of the environment. I went to University of Wisconsin La Crosse. I We had a large marching band at the time. I was a big band geek, and I found my home there. Um, and I found a family of people. Found my best friends there. Found other friends there that are still awesome friends to this day, and found a home. And I think that helped a lot for my growth as a person and my growth as my maturation and my ability to do well. But I don't know that I fully overcame everything. I think it still sat there because I always felt to some extent my same insecurities were still there. I hadn't dealt with anything yet. I didn't have a true faith life to speak of at the time. I had kind of walked away from my faith once I got to college, got caught up in the partying atmosphere, got caught up in all of that. And so I think didn't deal with anything that I had issues with. So I think that was one of my mistakes then was not realizing that I had things to overcome and thought that just by embracing the band life that I could just work my way through it. And even in band, I think there were still moments when I felt I was not fully accepted there. As as weird as that sounds, that some people just seemed like they had their group and they were good and they were there. And I had lots of great friends, but at the same time I didn't feel like I belonged. And uh, which, considering I just said that I found my home there and that my best friends were made there, how can I say that I feel like I didn't belong? And I think it goes just, I don't know if it goes to that insecurities or my desire to feel unique as part of my personality. I'm not quite sure where all that comes from. I'm sure somebody that's a psychologist could analyze me till the end of days and tell me what's going on there. But I think I always felt like I was on the outside of kind of watching myself go through life and participating in things kind of at arm's length and never felt like I was kind of phase shifted away from the real world. And as weird as that sounds, it it feels right when I talk about it that way. And so I got out of college eventually. I had struggles at the end of college with some relationship struggles and struggles with those same friends. Um, and so that was tough. I did some avoidance of things there as well. I hadn't changed my behavior, so I was still fairly narcissistic. I had not thought enough into the long game when I chose my career of computer science or my major of computer science and math. Why did I want to go down those routes? And I think it was partly because I thought it was cool, but was it really truly what I wanted to do? I don't know. When I look back on it now, I could say I wish I would have done X, or I had dreams in high school of going to medical school, but I didn't because I got comfortable and I stopped pushing myself other than trying to get assignments done and meet a class grade and things like that. But I didn't step back and say, what do I truly, really, in my heart of hearts, did I want to do? And I think that's related to all of this and that I was trying to take the easy path through and not fail. And so I had relationship struggles. I kept that led me to being I don't know if it's promiscuous is the right word, but I was in relationships for the physical aspects and did not open myself up to the girls I was dating to really get to know them and to have them get to know me because I think I thought if they knew the real me, they wouldn't want anything to do with me. And so through a lot of my 20s and into my 30s even, I really struggled with self-image and self-worth. And that came to a head with my first marriage. I got married in the year 2000. Um, and I was doing well in my career, but I wasn't happy. I've talked about it before in the podcast that I didn't, that there was a lot of ego involved, and I thought I was always looking towards the next promotion or the next job or more money or something like that to make things easier. I was never happy with where I was, and I think that depression was keep creeping in there and through there. I was irritable with my ex. I mean, she may or may not have her own issues. I'm not going to deny any of that. I'm just going to talk about my side of it. And I know that I was selfish, that I was not a giving and loving husband at the time I thought I was. But again, it was kind of at that physical level. It was I'm doing things. I'm you know sexually things were all right, and I was bringing home the bread. I was doing this. I was doing that, but I was not emotionally available, or I was not making progress as an individual to take ownership of the things that were wrong, within my head or within our marriage. Um, so when our marriage started struggling, I started counseling, and I I was kind of at my wit's end to an extent of what can I possibly do. And it's kind of a nice quote, or related, not kind of a nice quote, but it's a related quote of Ned Vizzini from It's Kind of a Funny Story. I didn't want to wake up. I was having a much better time asleep, and that's really sad. It was almost like a reverse nightmare. Like when you wake up from a nightmare, you're so relieved. I woke up into a nightmare. And I wouldn't say it was something where I was like screaming, scared nightmare. It was just, ugh, this again. I got to go through this again. I got to fight like this again because I don't know what to do. And so, I started counseling. I started talking through things back then, cognitive behavior therapy, where it's like self-talk of catch yourself having these thoughts and change them to be something else. That was a big part of the rage back then. And to a certain extent, that's a great way to do it. It's just we didn't spend a lot of time trying to resolve my previous issues. Why am I thinking that? Why am I feeling that? Why do I do X, Y, and Z? And so I think that's why that necessarily didn't help me a whole lot at the time, is that I didn't go backwards. I didn't have a faith life to sustain me yet by any stretch of the imagination. And let me just also be honest in saying that through all this time, pornography was still an issue. I was still getting my dopamine hits from porn, and so that's going to lead to low dopamine levels outside of that. And so I found life to be shades of gray and less interesting than that world. And so that never is a good thing to happen at all. Um, so the place to take this, or the next place to take this, since the CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, wasn't necessarily working completely, we had to lift up my moods. I mean, I was down, I was depressed, I was not enjoying life. So I started on medications, and it took two or three meds to find one that did not have the negative side effects that antidepressants can have, and I'll let you look those up for yourselves. But eventually ended up on Wellbutrin, and a maximum dose of Wellbutrin. And if that gives you any indication, before I started to feel less low on a day-to-day basis. I also felt that the highs were muted, but I felt at least on a level playing field at that point. So this was probably 2006, and my marriage still wasn't better. And I think it was most likely, unfortunately, it was not salvageable even at that point. Um, but I was still committed to working. I wasn't going to be the one to pull the trigger, and I was still trying. I may not have known what it exactly was to try, but I was committed and I wasn't giving up. But unfortunately, that choice was not mine to make, and we ended up getting divorced. which brought on its whole separate set of issues. I mean, there was the divorce, which derailed me for a couple of years, losing my job, and having to find a way around that. All of that, when you are defined by your job, as I was prior to getting laid off in March, April of 2009, that's a big shock to the system. And I think that was where my first realization started. There was a nugget planted, at least, of I am not my job. I am more than that. But it took me a while to get to that point. It kind of took getting into a whole ton of debt and being at my wit's end and realizing, this whole financial game, this whole ego, this whole I'm nothing now. What do I have to lose to take this to the next step, or to do something about this? So when you get to that point where you've been stripped of everything that you thought you were defined by, I had lost my marriage, I had lost my job, I was in danger of losing my house. You can either choose to suck start a rifle or something like that, or bury yourself in a bottle, or whatever your path is that you might choose. But I think my saving grace at that time was number one, my son. I didn't I didn't want to miss a minute of his life and the ability to be with him. And I think deep down inside, there was no way I was ready to give up yet. I had committed to a fitness journey. I threw my energy into that, and I was still misguided, I think, in terms of things. I was still, using porn as my upper, um, and did for a while yet, but I wasn't ready to give up. I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of sadness. I mean, the Wellbutrin I was still on through 2009, 2010. Um, so that kept me from the lowest of lows, but it was tough. And then I was able to make ends meet. I was able to keep going for a time while I tried to figure out some of my stuff. And wasn't necessarily doing counseling then. This was therapy on a bike, doing a 4 or 5 hour bike ride on my own with just me, myself, and I to talk to. But it was revelatory from the perspective of what's really important to me, what things really matter in my life. And I quickly discovered it wasn't the job, wasn't even the house, it was my family, the friends that I had, my son. And in the summer of 2009, Jill came into my life, and that was the start of the new chapter. But it's not something that she can't change me. My son can't change me. My family can't change me. Nobody can change me except me if I want to. And so it took a while, gave some prodding from Jill, us falling deeper in love, starting to deal with my junk, but I still had that empty faith hole in my heart, I'm sorry to say. We were practicing as Catholic then, and I just wasn't feeling enough from that. And I think I knew that there was emptiness there. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't reach out to my family about that. I didn't reach out to friends. I have a lot of friends because I didn't think that as a Catholic was something you did. And, we go to church, but we don't necessarily talk about our faith all the time. That was my perception, rightly or wrongly. Um, that was my perception. And so, are you just checking the box going to church, or are you actually bringing your faith into your life, into your heart, and into your soul? And So I did better through 2009, 2010, 2011. I got a new job with a new company, the company I'm still with right now. I started traveling more, so that kind of sucked. But my wife and I, Jill and I, worked through a lot of junk on her side, a lot of junk on my side. We started going back and talking about all this old stuff and starting to figure it out and starting to deal with my insecurities of how I feel about life and things. And I think that's where we started to make a whole lot more of a difference. So, so I'm not where we're at today. I'm still working through stuff, and I think I always will be. It is possible for me to get down probably easier than I should, or to get into a situation where I'm blaming myself for something, but I try not to wallow in it like I used to. And I try to catch myself and deal, not ignore the emotions or bury the emotions, but detach myself from those emotions and kind of let them sit off to the side like a stew or something like that and boil or simmer if they need to, while I decide if those emotions are really helping me or hurting me. And that kind of goes back to a little bit of a stoic philosophy of, do you let your emotions control you, or do you control your reaction to your emotions? And I can control my reaction long enough to give me a chance to deal with it constructively. I'm not perfect at it. My wife will be the first one to tell you that, and I'll probably be the close second, but I'm better. And I think I still struggle with the self-worth side of the aspect of depression, and I'm working to redefine that part of me now as well. That's kind of what this podcast is for, is to reach others and give you a chance to understand there is hope, that I can do so much more, and so can you, that you can go above and beyond anything you've ever imagined, and you can do it one step at a time. It's not going to happen overnight. It is going to be slow, painful at times, with regression and backing up, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sometimes, but it is possible. I mean, it's taken me my whole life to get to where I am today, and but I want to encourage you that the journey is worth it. And I would also encourage you that I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today without having that faith explosion 5, 6 years ago, 6 years ago. That without opening my heart to God and giving Him my anxieties, my inadequacies, my feelings about how I don't measure up, giving that all to Him and knowing that in His eyes, I do measure up fully, completely, and 100%, and that He's the only one that matters, that just makes the difference to me. So, my friends, family may not have known I'm talking about any of this stuff, but I would guess you've seen nuggets of it over the years at different points in times as I've struggled with things or dealt with things. But so I'm trying to talk through and be open about it. I don't want to go too far, too much further down the rabbit hole with this one, but to say that the main components of dealing with this would be, obviously, if you're feeling suicidal, call help, call for help, the suicide hotline that I'll put in the notes to the podcast. Do not hurt yourself, do anything stupid, um, do anything you won't live to regret. Talk to somebody, find someone to go to, and get help. That may mean medication, at least for a time, like it did for me, but it doesn't have to be a sentence for the rest of your life. Maybe it is. I don't know. Everybody's different and everybody reacts differently. But then get help, whether that be through your church, through friends, through family, counseling outside of church. But I'd also ask you to open up your heart to God, to listen to His message and talk through how He sees you, and trust in Him and build a trust in Him. And I don't know how else to say that, but it's been transformational for me. I still struggle. I still have times where I'm down, but it's all It feels different now. I know he is there for me. I know he is there for me to support me and love me and be there for me when I need him. And I've never felt that before. So get help, dig up your junk, trace back to the origins of what your problems are, understand how they're affecting you today, how you react to things, learn, try to learn how to not be controlled by your emotions. Use those emotions when you need to, but don't let them control your reactions. And then have a faith journey that walks you through it, that supports you while you walk this journey. That's kind of my plan. That's kind of what I do. I'm interested in hearing more and interested in talking to someone that has a better picture on that, um, because I want to be more happy and I want to love my life and just be absolutely all in with everything I do. And I struggle with that still, but I'm getting there and I'm working at it. So, and I think you can be there also. So for Grow to Amazing, this is Tony, out.